Bitcoin has finally crossed $1 trillion market cap, and we're now at a point where cryptocurrencies cannot be ignored anymore. At this stage, however, there are still a lot of opinions about the future of this invention. Tech investor Naval Ravikant talks about it in his live stream in 2017.
Yeah, Bitcoin and crypto is a revolution. I'll say that, I really only got into it in a big way last year, and decided to just go all in terms of my thought process and time on it. But once you figure it out, it's hard to think about anything else. It's hard to think that there's any other thing that's going on that's as important. Now, of course, it's probably not true. It's a big and complicated world, and there's lots and lots of important things going on. But anyone who's interested in the intersection of politics, economics, technology, finance, will just find cryptocurrencies and blockchains to be this really interesting rabbit hole. I think humans have created something that's larger than ourselves. It's sort of like when we first invented markets. And so, when you invent something that big, it's hard for anyone to figure out how it works. So we are all now collectively trying to figure out how to describe it, and what its properties are. And it almost feels like this organism larger than ourselves that we're all working on co-evolving. So yeah, maybe I should be looking at someone's talking about like human networks and blockchains, and U.S. government will do regulations around crypto. I think of governments and crypto as sort of the final boss. Like when the major governments of the world sort of realize what crypto is capable of, I think there's a number of them that are going to reject it in a big way. And I don't think we've seen that yet. We've seen the Chinese crackdown, but we haven't seen the Western governments yet struggling with crypto. And I think when that happens is when we're going to find out how powerful the crypto revolution really is, whether it can sustain.
Chamat Palihapitiya also talks about it late last year, where he notes that if in the past there's only a 1% chance Bitcoin will catch on, now it's at 5 or 10% because of the interest that Bitcoin is getting.
I've always thought of Bitcoin as a very binary investment, whether it goes from 80 to 8,000 to 6,000 to 3,000 to 13,000, it doesn't matter. This is either zero or it's millions. I think Bitcoin needed a moment like this for it to be relevant. In 2013, I bought a lot. And at one point, I think I had almost 5% of all the Bitcoins. My basis is about $80 a coin. I've never bought more. Most of my Bitcoin now sit with a company. And they use it for trading purposes. They use it to run a bunch of other strategies. And I did that mostly for safety and security and peace of mind. I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted to own equity in a business. That equity can be hedged. That equity can be tax structured advantageously, and then it allows them to run a big business, which generates cash, and I can get a cash and dividend stream. So I have not bought since I initially basically wrote that article for Bloomberg in 2013. My thoughts are the following. Right now, I think what you're seeing is that it's still a speculative instrument, and it's too speculative for it to be reliable. So if you're going to make the case that it should replace fiat currency, well, one thing you have to look at is the volatility of the US dollar, and you can't replace it with something that's 9 sigma more volatile. It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that it's too, again, going back to what markets are important. The only market that's even more important than the debt markets are the currency markets. And what you see is enormous amounts of liquidity where 5% moves, so 500 basis point moves, are newsworthy. Well, those 500 basis point moves, in the absence of some massive exogenous event, take years to play out. And in that, there's value because it allows more market participants to be active in that market so that they can use it as a critical pillar of how they run their business. But now all of a sudden, if you have 2,000 basis point moves a half hour, you can't effectively use it. And so what it does is it pushes it into this ghetto of day traders and speculators. And right now, that's where we are. We're in that ghetto. And you need to get out. And the way that it gets out is that you need to flush the speculators and day traders out. And you need to have still some basis of interest from long-term holders. And then you need to have it slowly look like the traditional infrastructure could really implode. So again, I go back to, we are driving slowly, but we are driving towards the top of a cliff. And then we're going to drive much, much faster down that cliff or down that hill. And at the end of it is a huge brick wall. The way we avoid it is by pivoting to a resilient economy where we introduced inefficiency and cost and inflate our way out of it, or debasement. The path dependence for Bitcoin is if it looks like path 2 is likely, it will really emerge as a flight to safety. And over the next 10 years, where this trajectory is going to take shape, and it is a 10-year trajectory, you'll have a lot of time to vector into it to protect yourself and to hedge yourself. And I've always thought of Bitcoin as a very binary investment, whether it goes from 80 to 8,000 to 6,000 to 3,000 to 13,000, it doesn't matter. This is either zero or it's millions. Because what it will do is it will create a quasi-gold standard. It'll create an index, except instead of having to own gold, where gold is owned by central banks, it is an instrument that has value that's determined by and between its participants, and it's owned by everybody. So maybe the correct way to say this is that it's not gold, but in gold being gold 2.0, which some people have used about Bitcoin, what it does is it replaces the method of value transfer that you need for fiat money to be valuable. But that only happens if the US dollar looks like it's going to careen into this wall. So I think that's the bet. So the setup is here. So before, there was no path dependence, meaning you were speculating and not really hoping, because, you know, if you're using it as schmuck insurance as I was, you were kind of hoping it would never come in. But now, if the probability, was 1% that it would be valuable, unfortunately, the probability is now probably like 5 or 10%. And there's a real chance by 2030, we don't find a way to inflate our way out of this. And that the only way to break the back of deflation is essentially to create some quasi form of gold standard. But it'll be almost impossible to do that between governments and central banks. They'll never agree on an instrument and they'll never agree on an exchange. But then bottoms up, people could decide to do it.
Yeah.
And the minute that happens, individuals and people, then it's a done deal.
Elon Musk also talked about crypto before. Although this podcast from a few years back shows he is a bit more cautious about any predictions than how he is now fully supporting the technology.
I'm neither here nor there on Bitcoin.
What did you think when you read like Satoshi's white paper for the first time? You're like, oh, it's pretty interesting. Or
That was pretty clever. It's just like the things. Yeah. this always gets like the crypto people angry, but there are transactions that are not within the bounds of the law, and there are obviously many laws in different countries, and normally cash is used for these transactions. But in order for illegal transactions to occur, the cash must also be used for legal transactions. You need an illegal to legal bridge. That's where crypto comes in.
So is it kind of the dark net stuff?
It can't be entirely
Yeah.
dark, because otherwise how do you buy normal stuff?
True. Yeah.
And cash these days is used just much rarer. It's hard. It's like increasingly difficult to use cash. Some places you can't use cash at all.
True.
So there's a forcing function for transactions that are illegal, quasi-legal, and in some cases legal. But it's got to have some. It's got to be both legal and illegal. It doesn't count otherwise. Otherwise, you simply it can't just be transactions within an illegal economy. Because how do you buy food in a house or something? You must have a legal to illegal bridge. So where I see crypto as effectively as a replacement for cash, but not as a replacement as a primary. Not as I do not see crypto being the primary database. So now this is sometimes taken being like I'm being judgmental about crypto, and it's actually I think there's a lot of things that are legal that shouldn't be illegal. But so it's not as though I think that sometimes governments just have too many laws about that. They shouldn't have so many things that are illegal.